boxes that are outward facing are years and years deprecated. They should have been replaced 20 years ago. I myself personally, on yesterday morning when I started my workday, my basement flooded. And it wasn't anything to do with my plumbing. It was the sewer line, the main line, 27 feet out, was clogged. And the plumber, drain tech, informed me that it was because those main line was so corroded that it was causing a blockage, and they needed to be replaced. I know that's not a city problem, it's supposed to be the HOA, but I'm not the only homeowner that's experienced this. So I'm appealing to you guys, if there's any resources you're aware of. One, I think as a city, as a community, you need to be aware that there's 180 units in Emerald Hills, and we're all at risk, and how that's going to impact the South Ogden City. And that there's anything you can do to help us would be much appreciated. So
thank you, Catherine. And I'll talk the next section on the response to public comment. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else, please, sir?
Good evening. My name is Kirk Nigro. I'm the Regional Business Manager for Rocky Mountain Power. And I just wanted to introduce myself. I am your contact, and I represent Weber and Davis counties. And oddly enough, I grew up in South Ogden, lived in South Ogden most of my life. We just recently moved to Harrisville, but from South Ogden. But this is my home. And
Bonneville High graduate.
Yeah. And I can remember my first speaking moment was in the old city hall. We were a youth city council, and I was the mayor voted, and my first talk was to get funding for next year's youth city council, and that was I was much more nervous than I am today. The reason why I am here is we have a franchise ordinance with South Ogden City that is going to expire June 3rd of this year. And I haven't been really successful on figuring out how to work with the council on getting any questions or updates for a template on that, as well as get that prepared for your review and approval so that we can be in compliance with that ordinance. It is a land use ordinance that kind of directs the right-of-ways or public ways for our interaction with our electric assets in the city, and how we appropriately work together with that. And so it's important to have that, because obviously we don't want to be out of compliance, and then if something goes out of power, we have to apply for a permit and cause delays in reconstruction or getting power put back online. And so my reason for being here is to figure out what would be the best path for us to get a template for the council for their review, as well as to work through getting that ordinance passed by the council before it expires.
Do you have a business card?
I don't, but I can get you one.
Well, if you feel you talk to Summer, our assistant city manager now, or she'll give you maybe one of hers, and work through her for that. That'd be great.
Perfect. Thank you so
And
much.
tell your brother Todd hi.
You bet.
We went to high school together. So.
Yep, I definitely remember. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Kirk. Kirk, yeah, from Rocky Mountain.
Hello.
Hey, sir.
Joe from also Emerald Hills. So we're all freaking out, basically, is what it is. And we know this is probably not the right place to go. We're just looking for guidance. So when I lived for 34 years out on Fruitland Drive in North Ogden, I just moved here, thought it was going to be my forever, relax and not have to stress. And we were unincorporated Weber County. So I knew what I felt like all that time, no matter what was happening around us, nobody was there really for us. If a storm drain that flooded our basement all the time, they'd say, well, that's not North Ogden. Well, Weber County, that's not Weber. So we were just kind of like free willing out there for all. And I thought it was horrible until now, because now I feel like we're the same thing. Kind of in South Ogden, though, here we are in this little community that's almost, so is that what being in, because I didn't know what an HOA was. So is it almost like we're an independent little spot on a map, inside of South Ogden that almost governs itself? So
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a very, you just got a lot of people that are young couples probably freaking out. And so just like she said, We're just trying, some of us can afford some of the stuff that's happening over there, but a lot of people can't. And I'm afraid it's just gonna collapse and what happens. And if, does anybody know of anybody or seen this happen in your experience where a HOA collapses and what really happens? And does the city have anything to do with it? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Yeah, come on up there.
Hello, I'm Lexi Lunt. I live in the Emerald Hills condominium location also. I've been there almost 10 years. I'm the rabble-rouser, the troublemaker, the, oh my gosh, what's going on? I've been in the construction business since I've been 15 years old. At 25, my husband and I started our own construction company, and we're always self-employed. In the late 80s, I got a real estate license in the state of Utah, and 10 years later, I got a principal broker's license and have run my own real estate business since that time. So my husband passed away 17 years ago, and it took a while. At the economy in 2007 and 8 and 9 wasn't the best, so I stayed in a too spacious house for quite a while, and to be able to take care of myself and not lean on my family with all their busy lives, I bought into this Emerald Hills condominium. I lived across the street in Washington Terrace from 2 condominiums, complexes, and I was friendly and knew people that lived there, and I could hear these little complaints, of this or that or everything. And then when I moved into this place, I had the either good fortune or misfortune of living right. I could directly see the maintenance yard and the RV parking. For 2 years, we have huge windows. I had my blinds up because there was so much traffic right in that area. After that time, I got mirrored windows. The windows are floor to ceiling. They're huge, and I have 2 different sets of them. Once I kept my blinds open, I started seeing all kinds of material things leaving in Friday night, trucks piled with all kinds of stuff coming back on Monday morning and empty, and I started questioning things about that. Tried to run for the board when I first moved in there, and I was totally blocked. We pick our people who are supposed to be on the board. We didn't have to pick you. I said, I think I have a good enough business mind to serve the community. That began I've been labeled by the president of the association. He has different jobs in titles, I should say. But I soon found out that one person governed this whole community and the fear that he brought to the people. And so after going through a lot of things, I've been to court, I've been to several attorneys, and I appealed to our association that manages our Northern Wasatch Association, Mike Ostermiller, a number of times with my complaints. I just recently was getting acquainted with Katie Hall, who is the legislature. She just happens to go to church with the same church that I go to, and so we've been talking. This Morris DeVoe is a HOA attorney. He has another lady in there, Lauren DeVoe. I've been to her twice and tried to do some things and found out that there aren't many legal things for associations, that you can go outside of the association and have any kind of legal help to help do anything. And so our question is, what how do we receive legal help? We're in the city limits of South Ogden City, so if we see crimes committed, if we see theft, unlawful, anything that goes along with the people running the association, how can we go to our governing people who are supposed to help uphold the law and say, there is something really wrong here, without having to always say, well, you're your own little entity in there, which doesn't seem reasonable at all, that we couldn't, that we're set aside as you're outside, or you're not in our realm of actions of the law.
Okay, thank you. Let me answer all those. Let me answer, or at least comment on all of yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've learned a lot about this over time, as I've had other complaints from, mainly from yours, but a few others. And our city attorney talks about HOAs as really, in a sense, you are your own island. You know, HOAs are able to have smaller roads. They're able to have some other things other places don't get, because they're, what's the PID? PRUD, those kind of private residential use. So we do provide fire service, police service, but we don't plow, we don't pave your roads, those kinds of things. And it's pretty well spelled out legally. So once I got Patty's letter, very concerning, of course, and so I passed on to my city manager. He said, we'll discuss it at staff meeting. They did discuss it at staff meeting. Most departments felt like legally that their hands were tied. The fire chief did say we can inspect fire hydrants, look for some grants to maybe help with some of the other fire prevention type issues. I did ask Mr. Dixon to talk to our attorney about formulating a letter that would explain exactly what the city can and can't do, what the HOA is responsible for, and then some suggestions of who to call to get this rectified. Years ago, our previous city attorney would always just tell me that these are civil cases. I guess if you someone committing a crime, that's probably a different thing. So embezzlement, I guess, is a crime, so that might be something that we can talk to the chief of police about. So I will get that, remind the city manager, probably remind the attorney to get that letter, just so that as I receive these questions, because we get a lot, that can say, okay, here's what the city can, here's what the city can't do. But the bad news is mostly HOAs are really under themselves, and they're supposed to have a board that's elected and follow all those kinds of things. So this is a bit perplexing. One question was if anybody's seen collapses or what would happen, and I have not. But yeah, Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. I live in Ironwood, and I served as the HOA president for 2 years there. We did experience in Ironwood a sewer backup, and we had to pay that expense out of the HOA. I was surprised because I thought on my bill, public bill that I pay each month, there's sewer, and I thought, well, maybe that applies to the city, but it doesn't. And I learned very quickly that a sewer situation is the HOA problem. Mayor, I'll be glad to be a resource for you. I know what you're talking about HOA, because I dealt with it for 2 years there in Ironwood, and I know exactly what situations you go through. So it's nothing new that you're telling me, because I experienced that also. But to be a research for you.
So what I will promise you is we have our deputy fire chief here, so they will formulate a plan to inspect those fire hydrants. They'll continue to look for other ways to do that. I know one of your residents works for the Red Cross. We did a thing with them of smoke detectors. We can do some things like that to help some of the fire issues. So, yes, oh, and the chief did mention an evacuation plan in a meeting, so we could put that together. Promise we'll do that. I promise I'll remind the city attorney for that letter that I requested, and we'll do that, and think of any other things that we can do to help. Mr. Ashen, anything on HOAs that you think would be helpful to this? Have I said anything wrong or not enough?
No, I think you're good there.
Okay. So, please.
So I would hope that you are familiar with the CCNRs for your HOA. Have you read those and seen if there's any stipulations there about if the HOA goes away or anything?
What does that stand for, Elise?
CCNRs are the
They're the bylaws. and the
bylaws of
governing.
the HOA. Thank you.
Covenants, that's the C
They
word.
stand for, I don't know, I can't remember.
Covenants bylaw, okay. that's good
Good
enough for me.
covenants, thank you. So, yes, that would be my first suggestion, is be very familiar with those bylaws and see what they say as far as elections and people who are serving and.
To address that, we are very familiar with our bylaws. The CCNRs, we're very familiar with those.
Kathy, will you come back to the microphone, please?
We are very familiar with the CCNRs. We've gone over, I've said, my husband and I spent about 10 grand on an attorney to be able to get the financial records, which they should have just said here in a thumb drive. And that's where the forensic accountant addresses the reason why we met with so much obfuscation and obstruction. It would just boggle your mind. We actually have the current president of the HOA has been running the place. Back to give you some backstory, back in the 90s when he got on the board, he changed the bylaws. Somehow he got it through the homeowners at that time that he changed the bylaws and got rid of the term limits. So that's something to think about in our current political situation. He got rid of the term limits. Therefore, he's elected. We are not allowed to see the votes as they're counted. Even with an attorney, we cannot see who voted for what. The votes are not counted during our association meeting once a year, which he does in October, so most of the snowbirds are gone, right? So he does this in October. We're not allowed to see the votes. We're not allowed to be there when they count the votes, and we're told who wins. And I've tried to run for the board because I wanted to, for no other purpose, I wanted to see the financials, because when we had the big windstorm in 2020, he was giving me my husband and I, a lot of misinformation. And that was not in line with what I was hearing from the insurance company. I talked to the insurance adjuster about our roof situation when we had the big windstorm, and started to suspect that there was some really sketchy stuff going on. So, yeah, we're familiar with it, but we have a dictator, and we don't have any whip to get him out.
It's unfortunate.
Mayor,
Yeah.
with our experience at Ironwood, is we have ours HOA annual meeting in August, and at that meeting, the ones that are voted onto the board, their names are listed, and then the vote is cast at that meeting, and the secretary of the HOA reveals what the votes were. And those who are voted onto the board have the highest amount of votes. And that's the governing principle of your HOA, is that meeting there. And that is not correctly
That's unfortunate.
how we run it. Is at Ironwood is that we reveal whose names are listed and what the votes they get.
That is absolutely what we expect.
Yeah.
That's not what they get.
Ironwood is lovely. I walk my dog right by Ironwood all the time.
Good.
I wished I would have bought into Ironwood.
Well, you can have a couple units available. So
Not only that, just one other thing to point out is that the difference in property values, even though I may have more square footage than in
Right.
Ironwood, because I've got close to 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
My home is is bid out $100,000 less than the home in Ironwood. So
Yeah.
because of this lack of maintenance and this crap that goes on constantly, it's deprecating our property by $100,000.
well, your governing principle is the annual meeting, and that should be governed. That
Should be, but it's not.
That determines what.
Well, most of our staff's here. We got Public Works and Police and Fire here, and they've heard our conversation, and
We appreciate
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.
Any help you can provide to us as our little isolated island of community.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being, you are South Ogden residents. We'll do what we can within the law.
I do.
Thank you.
I'm probably across the fence from where you live, because we live on 1,000
His
East.
email and phone number are in the newsletter every week.
Yeah, you can. I'm not hidden up there.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your patience on that. That's tough. All right, item 4 is the consent agenda, approval of the January. Oh. Any online public comment? I didn't say that, so I'll say that now. If anybody online would like to comment, thank you, Councilmember. We'll give you till 6:30 to make any online comments. Thank you. Consent agenda, one item, approval of our January 7th council minutes and our January 21st work session minutes. Any corrections, changes, adjustments to those? Councilmember Stewart?
So, Mayor, I contacted Lisa, and there were a couple of items, and she's aware of them and has made them, I believe, and they were clerical errors.
Okay. And entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda with those changes.
So,
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed?
I'll have to abstain because I wasn't there.
Excellent, thank you. Our first discussion action item is consideration of Resolution 25-02, ratifying of approval of agreement with Rockwell Supply for SCADA meter system. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. Before you tonight is ratification for this bid. I guess we need the mic. You can still hear me. Get Lisa. What it is we are upgrading our SCADA system. We did it, I can't remember how many years ago. And then this, I guess it was this summer, we were basing upgraded theirs. We no longer communicate with them in a timely manner. So it's affecting both sides of our watering system. So at nighttime, we're getting calls almost nightly, daily, with alarms. They can't tell us where things are at. We can't see where things are at. This new system will get us in compliance and should be able to move us forward. There should be no other installations from their end to have issues. But right now, we currently don't have, they call it, if you read the thing, a CTU, a central telemetry unit. It compiles and collects most of the data. We do not have one of those. This will be able to do that for us to help us address things. Right now, we have trouble with our remote sites. This is going to enhance how we control our remote sites. And then this individual is the one that it did some of the stuff where we were basing and knows exactly what we need to do here. So
Okay.
that's what you have. He is currently working on it. I talked with City Manager Dixon. This has been in the works for a while, trying to get it rolling and bids and going, and here we are. He's got most of it ordered and should be able to start work. We gave him 4 months to complete it. It'll probably take a little bit more depending on some of the programming, but he was pretty comfortable with the 4 months, so there. But that's it.
Questions? Councilmember Stewart?
So you answered part of them.
Okay.
One was, when did we become aware that it wasn't going to match? One was, when did it become an emergency, right? Like, it looks like it's being approved under a ratification as an emergency situation.
Okay?
So I'm curious, like, if we've known since summer, then what
I
made
don't
it
think
suddenly
the
become?
issue come up as far as whether you consider it an emergency or professional service. It came up to a head probably the last couple of months. I've had the contract for a while, I think Lisa had it the 1st of December, I believe, for review. And we're still getting calls, like my on-call guy's getting calls on a regular basis right now. They're not being able to control things. So as it's gone on, it's got a lot worse for us. So I believe, I want to say I sent it to Lisa and the city attorney the 1st of December, 2nd of December to get it reviewed. It's been sitting there and we're here today. Like I told city manager, we need to move. We're losing efficiency in the water system. You're paying a guy every night to answer a phone call a couple of times. He's got to come in, look at, valves which are operating correctly. And I mean, it's just not very efficient where it's at. So that's why we're here tonight.
I guess I would say I'm not opposed to the, it looks fine. I just am,
What's a ratification?
yes, I would prefer that they come ahead of time, right? Instead of it being like, okay, we've already made the decision and
Okay,
now you're,
you bet. Yeah.
Mayor.
Yeah, please.
So it's 120 days, is that right,
Yes.
John?
Yep,
When do they start?
he's already started.
Has he?
Yes, he started buying materials. Once this is, he signed it, I believe, last Thursday is when he officially signed it, so it would have started last Thursday, so he should be done. He's already been able to eliminate some of the alarms already at this point within the last few days, so.
And if he's not finished in 120 days, if he goes over, there's a $200 penalty each day?
There is,
For
unless he
that.
negotiates whether, and they can negotiate in that, whether it's, material supply, maybe he can't get material here, and that's approved through, like, our engineers and everybody from our end, making sure. It keeps them on task, but at the same time, they do have some options to extend the contract if necessary.
Okay, but if they don't, then he has a $200,
Correct,
okay.
correct.
And the final payment has to be rendered when?
When he is complete.
Okay,
Yep, when he's complete. Yep.
okay.
Yeah, please.
do you know what the current budgeted amount is for SCADA and meters? It indicated that it was already
Yeah, I want to
budgeted.
say, don't quote me. Peter can help me out back there. I want to say there's like 120, because we were looking at using them for some antennas and a couple of things, so I want to say it's more than well covered in here. So it was just kind of a reroute. We're like, oh, shoot, we got to go this way, so that's what we did there.
Okay. And then is there no state contract available?
That, there is, but we went with this individual because of his knowledge of where Weber Basin and making sure our system will function with Weber Basin.
I see.
Questions? Yeah, just prefer to not have to ratify, but to do it previously, so we don't do this often, but
No, I don't like to do it
we
either,
don't like to
but,
do it.
yeah.
That's kind of on us. We did push, John had this from the attorney, and it became a little bit more of a scheduling issue than we anticipated, and so we'll do a better job of getting ahead of that, but needed to make the purchase, or needed to execute before we could get it on the agenda, so.
Okay.
We'll do a better job.
All right. Any further discussion? Entertain a motion that we approve Resolution 25-02.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's a roll call vote. Councilmember Howe?
Yes.
Councilmember Howard?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Smythe?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Next, a discussion item, proposed amendments to the city's purchasing policy. Someone, if you'll talk first, and then Peter, we'll turn some time to you.
Yeah, so this kind of came up because there's a few new bodies upstairs, and in trying to clean things out and do some organization and some cleanup of the building, it came to our attention that we couldn't throw anything away without coming to the council. So that was kind of the impetus for taking a look at this policy was, we don't necessarily think it's a good use of your time or ours to bring to you the disposal of a monitor.
I was going to say, yeah, give a couple examples.
Yeah, so specifically, we have a plotter that is probably from 90s? Yeah. It can't even be plugged in at this point because it's got the VGA. It's a big printer. It's about this big. Yeah, and so it was intended to print out blueprints, for example. But we can't plug it into anything anymore because it's got a VGA, and none of our computers have VGA. So it's essentially unusable and taking up a lot of space, but we can't throw it away without coming to council. So, and per our purchasing policy, there's other items, just, whether they be old files, old file cabinets, old chairs that have, holes or are broken or whatever. per our old purchasing policy, we would have to bring all of the disposal of those to the council, which just doesn't seem like a good use of anyone's time. If it's garbage, it's garbage, it's garbage. And we understand that it was purchased with city funds many, many years ago in the 90s or whatever the case may be. And also specifically our IT equipment, those monitors or computers have half-lives. Anything over 10 years old doesn't have a value anymore, but irregardless, not a word, it would have to come to council for disposal. So that's kind of why we ended up making changes to this policy, was just to recognize that, or to verbalize it in this document that if it's determined by department heads or staff members that something has a value of less than a certain amount, they can dispose of it either in the garbage if it's no value, or give it to Goodwill, or if there's minimus value. Or at certain levels, it can be disposed of through a bid process of some sort, whether that's a bid sync or whether it's putting it on KSL or whatever at certain levels. Those properties can be disposed of according to this policy without coming to council. What it does leave intact is at $5,000, which is where we capitalize assets. So something at $5,000 would go on our capital asset roster, basically, and if it meets the limit, if it still has a value of $5,000, it's a capital asset, and that would still come to council for acknowledgement that we will now be disposing of this through a bid process. Does that make sense? So that's kind of where we started with this policy. As we reviewed it, though, there were some other just kind of cleanup changes that we felt like probably made sense to make those changes while we were in the process of updating this policy with the council. So cleaning up our process for gift cards, for example. How we manage that is just a little bit different than how we've managed it in the past, and it really doesn't change, hasn't changed dramatically, but just the process is a little tweaked now, and so we wanted this to reflect the process that we're currently using. Yeah, so we did some cleanup in the rest of the document. Does that give you a good kind of
Thank you.
idea of where we were going and where we were hoping that council would see the value of
Council,
making
what
those
questions,
changes?
suggestions, further comments we have?
I have,
Lisa, Peter, and I all worked on it, so if I can't answer a question, then one of them
Yeah.
may be able to.
Councilmember Stevens?
so I appreciate that explanation of that, and the surplus property surely can be of value to us, because they do have a value there, but I appreciate that. I would like to have you just review how we handle credit card purchases in the city. I'm not familiar with that, and maybe that would be something we can, who has the
Peter, will you come to the
authorization?
microphone, please?
You don't have to do that, but just ready for other questions.
Yeah, so there are a handful of individuals in the organization that have credit cards, and we have set limits to those credit cards. So I'm not even sure what my limit is. Is it $2? Something like that.
Needs to be.
It's, we try to make this in line with the purchasing policy, of course, and it does require, any credit card purchase is still subject to the policy. Most of them have a limit of $5,000 as far as that goes. Everyone knows their own credit card company always wants to give you more credit than you wanted even sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, so we would make those purchases in line with the purchasing policy with our spending limits, right? And our budget, of course, what we have in the budget. And then we complete certain documentation that goes to Peter then, and then he checks that against the credit card bills that come in and monitors all of those expenses $1 to $100,000, Peter looks at every single one of those credit card.
So do they have to check with to the director or the manager of their department, or how's that handled?
Yeah, so if it's within the budget, then usually they'll just spend it. It comes to me and I'll sign off on it,
Okay,
if that makes sense. So we kind of know what's in our budget, what has been allocated for those expenses, and then we can spend up to that limit with department head approval, and then it goes to Peter for oversight.
okay.
And I may have talked about efficiencies that come with that sometimes, especially when you're doing a one-off purchase with a vendor that you don't use that regularly. You don't have to set them up for a vendor relationship to go pay for a FedEx package to be shipped, for instance. Then all of those credit card purchases are definitely put into our accounts payable system. So we can distinguish which ones were credit card purchases versus checks, but they're really viewed as one and the same in the system as far as the process goes, and the proper approvals are given for both sets of purchases as far as that goes.
What has changed in this policy is the triplicate forms that we've used in the past are a little archaic, not necessary. We've found a better process for processing credit cards without those forms. So we just wanted to clean up this policy to reflect the efficiencies that we're using. We may continue to use those triplicate forms, but we're not using them in the same way. And when they run out, we may have a different process that won't include the triplicate form. So we didn't want to have that language still remaining in the purchasing policy.
Thank you. Other questions?
Mayor.
Yes, please, Councilman.
Summer, and this is getting into the details, really
That's
into the
okay.
weeds. On page 83 of the packet, under paragraph E subsection 2, says the property must be disposed by a competitive bid, or I drew over it. Anyways, whatever it says, including the electronic auction, unless the city council waives a requirement. Under this, above there, it talks about being determined that it can be sold by the city manager, in blue under subsection 1. If it's determined to be sold by the city manager, how would the city council know to waive that requirement?
I guess my intent there was that if the city manager wants to not do a competitive bid process, so let's say there's something of that value that we just don't want to go through the process, it's not worth our time. Maybe it's a plow blade, right? And there's another city that can use it, or we've got another way that we want to dispose of that we would get city council's approval to go outside of the established process.
So you're saying the city manager could just come and say, hey, we've got this plow blade, this city wants to buy it, it makes no sense to go to bid and go through that process.
Correct.
Let's just sell them,
Something
and the
like
city
that, yeah.
council could approve
If
that.
we're going outside of this policy, then we would come to council for that.
Okay. Then a lot of red lines down to page 85 of the packet, bottom of the page, 85 of the packet, bottom of the page. An item of city property determined to be surplus and valued at $200 or more. Is that supposed to be $2,000 or more?
Yes. Lisa, correct? We moved around a lot
It's
of red
page
lines and green
85,
lines.
very bottom, page 16 on the
It's a G.
on the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah. G subsection 1.
Value of 200 or more.
I mean, the only reason I ask is because everything else was talking values of $2,000 of $49.99 or whatever. That looks like it should read $2,000.
Well, we're comfortable with whatever. Obviously, the lower the amount, the more comfortable, the higher the amount, that we don't necessarily have to go through a competitive bid process. But I think, Peter, your intent was to have that be at 200 just to make sure if it is You know, if the value really is still there, if it's a television or, you know, a projector that's still, maybe it's still got some value in it, but we're replacing it.
The biggest concern that audit staff has with setting that limit higher is that an employee might think that something of nominal value they can take with them, and that's not acceptable in most cases, actually.
So you think it was intended to be $200?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, we did add to the end of this, to that point, we did add a section to this policy. It's I,
Yeah.
under, so.
The employee and surplus property.
Yeah, employees and surplus property, because we did feel like that was missing in this process, was that just because we determine something isn't of use to the city anymore for whatever reason, doesn't mean that an employee inherits that
Well, and
piece of
by
equipment.
adding section I, you're eliminating that $200 risk.
Yeah, we could.
Right.
My thing about that
Good
is,
point.
if you're at $2,000 or whatever that 2,500 or whatever that dollar amount needs to be, there is something to be said for, let's not waste our time on
Yep.
it and spend city employees' time to get bids and make sure that we're getting best value and all that.
I like the suggestion, actually.
Yeah, that just,
And I'm not so sure that it wasn't meant to be 2,000, because everything around it
that's
says
right,
2,000.
that's what really caught my attention, was
And-
everything
and I
around was
guess
$2,000.
If that's an amount the council's comfortable with, then that's obviously makes
I just
things
don't
a little
want
bit more
ticky-tack
efficient.
later on, you know,
Yeah.
like you're coming back and it's $205
Yeah.
and we have to go bug Matt or
Right.
Summer about it, you
Yeah,
know?
yep.
But I remember the conversation and changing it to 200, but everything around it's 2,000. So I'm wondering if we changed it in the wrong place.
We appreciate that. Well, that's feedback we can take
Yeah.
back. If the rest of the council is in the same thought line there, as we get this ready for your approval, because right now it's just it's just here for a
Discussion.
discussion. We're not going to take action on it today because we wanted to be able to have this conversation with council. We don't want to take authority away from you that you want to have, but also we feel like this isn't necessarily a great use of anybody's time to nickel and dime. The amount of time that it spends to go through these processes of dispositioning and surplus obviously sometimes can cost more than the value of the item.
Councilmember Howard?
I was simply going to state that I appreciate the updates of certain policies, and that's, I look at it as we have a lot of new blood coming in, a lot of outside ideas coming into to our city, and I love the efficiency and that it does take some stuff away off of our plates that we don't need to look at, that doesn't need to come to us. And I say that having been to other cities, listened to councils, and now I have arguments with my wife because I'll say, hey, we discussed this, and she goes, why would you guys have to have this come to council? I would never have to go to council to ask for something like this. And it's true. So I do appreciate these updates. I love being involved with them, but there are things that we don't need to have come to us. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I think the $200 actually protects our employees much better than the 2,000.
Well, that's something that we can go back and maybe before we have a final draft for you guys to consider, we can look at that number again and see what really makes sense. I think we want to protect our employees. We want to make sure that we are protective of our audit situation and also use our time efficiently. So let us go back and really scrub that number a little bit and come back to you with a firm recommendation there.
Councilmember Stewart?
There were just a couple of things I wondered about. On page 13 of the policy or page 82 on the packet, on number 4 in about the middle of the page, It says parcels of city-owned real property which are not deemed significant shall be disposed of by following section B below based on the value of the real property. But then B doesn't talk about value at all. Does it?
Lisa?
That's discussed in C, D, E.
That's a good point. I think the intent there is that if the value is 0 to 199, we'd handle it in that section. If it
Yeah.
was between 200 and 5,000 or whatever.
Lisa?
Yeah, so it is basically saying that based on the value, you're either going to use the formal process or the
Informal.
informal.
But we can make that a little bit clearer. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on page 80, so 2 pages earlier. Just a minute, I'll find it. About in the middle of the page, oh, maybe the bottom third, notwithstanding the exceptions to the formal, so just prior to 8.10. Notwithstanding the exceptions to the formal bidding requirements listed above, a notice of the pure procurement must be published in accordance with section, I wondered if that was supposed to be 7.10.02.b instead of 1.
I thought I got all those changed.
Good catch.
What page is that again?
It's page...
Page 11 on the.
Yeah,
ordinance.
page 11 on the,
Just above bond
or
requirements.
80, yeah, just above bond requirements. Look at that, good job.
When it's the paragraph that says notwithstanding,
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
It should be 7.10.02B, which is.
I hit a 1 instead of a 7.
Good.
You're so good at that. Okay. Any other? Okay. You feel like you have your direction, your guidance?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
We'll bring this back next, one of the next policy sessions and
No, like Councilmember Howard said, I love you guys going through these kinds of things. Cleaning out Danielle and the U City Council cleaned out old candy from old eggs and had buckets full.
we
so,
went out on a limb that it was okay to throw that away.
So,
Is that $200 for the
there,
candy?
there are
Yeah,
some,
I'm not-
it was all
Mass don't
donated,
help.
but, so there are some old things here that have been stored from
Yeah.
previous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And we're just trying to find efficient ways to meet our
Yeah.
audit burden. Like the gift card policy, all of that stuff is in our payroll system, so we have records of all those things, of course. And I just want to thank Lisa and Summer. They did most of the work on this. So Lisa's quite the self-starter and stuff like this.
Great.
You guys
She
are
wants
great.
to clean stuff out too.
I have to go through all the records in the back room, and I want to get rid of all the junk so I can go through the records. I can't even get to them now.
One project usually leads to 3, so thank you for your efforts on that. Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Next reports, direction to the city manager and staff. Start on the other end. Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. This past week, we had a tragedy over at Glassman Pond, and my heart goes out to the family there. The temperature has risen in the last couple of days, and so I would just like to remind all of us that if we're around a pond or that maybe the ice is not too safe to go on, but that is a real tragedy, not only to the family of the young man who didn't make it out, but also his friend that was with him. I want to admonish the police department for being there and helping, and also the fire department for being there and assisting what needed to be done at that particular time. there, in our notes, we had an individual, a resident of South Ogden, give a great comment. They had a Christmas tree and they wondered how they were going to get rid of it. And there was a city employee going down the road or with a trailer of Christmas trees, and he stopped and helped them put the Christmas tree on. And it was Adele Young who appreciated that service. And that just shows you the type of people that we have in our administration and in our employees that's willing to extend the helping hand. This past week, we had the opportunity taking our youth council to the legislative meeting in Salt Lake City, and that was a great event for our youth council to go. Brent Slate, former council member, is heading that up, and he's making a difference not only in the city but also in the lives of these young individuals. And so, Mayor, I do appreciate that opportunity of you spearheading that, of developing the youth council. I think it's going to pay us benefits, but also in our last year being on the council, that we also constructed a skate park. And Mayor, I think that is moving forward, and it just shows that we're progressing here in the city, and I appreciate that opportunity. This past week, we had an opportunity of meeting as a council with Matt Dixon in spearheading what we call a strategy session, and it was enlightening to know exactly what direction we're going to go in that aspect there. It was very positive for us to take a look and see what we need to do. We've done a lot of things in our city that has been positive, a lot of growth in our city, but I'm always reminded that we still have many, many, many things to do. I do have a slight complaint a little bit. As I drive along 89, just on the north side of the road, the state doesn't take good care of that road for some reason. I don't know why. But there's a dead deer carcass up there. And there's some rubbish that's on the side of the road. Looks like someone either deposited some foam or a mattress or something. But I would hope that the state would address that a little bit more on 89. That's the entryway into our city, and we need to pay attention to that road that we have there. I've been on the council for about a year, and it's been a real enjoyment to me. I can see the growth. I can see the opportunities that are here in South Ogden, and I thoroughly enjoy working not only with administration, but our employees, but also my fellow council members. And I believe we have a desire to do the right things for our citizens. I think we have a desire to provide a place where people enjoy coming and enjoy working, enjoy living here and playing here. That's evident of our skate park and how popular it is. But I enjoy the time that I've spent here on the council. It's been very beneficial to me, and I thank the administration, the employees, and also the council members in lending that enjoyment to me, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilmember Smythe.
I just want to say the retreat was wonderful, even though it was only one day. It was always nice to have 2 days to meet with everybody because it's so enjoyable to work with the council and with the members of the departments. I think the camaraderie and how well we work together really showed, and that's just enjoyable. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
So Monday I participated with LPC and they talked about fiber just a little bit. There was a comment that came up that I hadn't thought about until they were talking about it, and they said, so what happens if 12 providers want to lay conduit in your front yard? And I thought, oh, I don't really like that. Just as I was thinking about it, because we had somebody that laid conduit in our front yard for fiber, and then we had somebody that came and put something on poles in our backyard for fiber. So anyway, I know there are already 2 options available, it seems like. So I guess I don't know at this point that there's anything that we do one way or the other, just maybe it's something we need to consider going forward. Like, anyway, and then I just wonder, I know there was a mention about a surface for the skate park to extend its life in the freezing weather. Wondering if we have any thoughts about when we might approach that anyway. And then, did we have any online comments?
No, I just wrote that. I was going to say that before we did that. But.
Thanks. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that reminder. There were no online public comments. I should have said that half hour ago. But thanks for that. Councilmember Howard. Howard. That didn't sound right for some reason.
No, I'm going to pass tonight.
Councilmember Howe.
Yeah, just kind of echo what Councilmember Stevens said about the City Youth Council. Danielle's done a great job, and we're happy to have Brent here, and it was an awesome time down at the Capitol building. I enjoy talking, and I enjoyed talking to them about that process. This time of year, always kind of, I nerd out on this kind of stuff, and reading ordinances and that. Yeah, I'm weird that way, I suppose. It's kind of with spreadsheets too. I like spreadsheets too. But no, it was great to take the youth down there, listen to Lieutenant Governor speak about her history in politics, and it was just good to see the excitement. So I was glad to be part of that. So thank you, Danielle and team that do that. Speaking of legislative sessions, we're about 2 weeks in, have a few more weeks to go. Again, as a reiteration for anybody in the public that's listening, or anybody here on the in the council chambers, to pay attention to your legislation. We sit and I get the opportunity to review the bills that are going through with a lot of our other city leaders around the Weber Ogden area, and there's a lot of things that we comment on and a lot of things that we try to push through, both positive and try to avert the negative. So if you're listening out there, please pay attention and feel free to reach out to your legislators. They are always willing to listen and are great allies to our city most of the time. Sometimes they make weird stuff up. So anyways, that being said, a few more weeks on that, pay attention to it, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Summer, please.
I missed the legislative session with the Youth Commission because I was down in St. George at the Fire Marshal Conference with Chief Story. It was probably not the right choice. No, I'm kidding. It was great. It was not as fun as you guys had, but it was a great opportunity to gain a better perspective of what types of things we would be dealing with post-disaster. Heaven forbid that ever happen here in South Ogden. We have a better idea of what types of things we should be planning for and how we would hopefully manage those types of events better. So thanks for providing the funds for us to get those kind of trainings. I really do think that they're valuable for city employees, and but for your willingness to fund those, we wouldn't have those opportunities, and we hope we'll bring that experience to bear here in South Ogden if it is ever necessary. So it was great to spend time with Chief Story, and I'm still learning fire, and so it's great to get that exposure. So thank you again. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. We heard a couple things. So, yeah, the Glassman Pond incident, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilor Stevens. All of the kids that either were the ones that went in the water, the ones that saved the kids from the water, those were all South Ogden residents. Even though Glassman sits in Ogden City, it was all South Ogden families that were affected. And so your continued prayers and help with them would be great, and our police department's been very helpful in that. And I just want to shout out to the other cities, too. Yeah, it was in Ogden City, you had Ogden, but you had Weber, people from Weber, other entities, and we have a great relationship with these other emergency services and search and rescue, and everybody does a great job on those kind of events. So thanks for everybody that helped our South Ogden kids that day. Good Friday night last week. Thanks for everybody's time. You know, we have a, 6-hour meeting, and on a Friday night. Can't think of any better people to spend it with than this crew here. So it was very effective, and I really appreciate everybody's time and attention to that. So we had U-City Council today before our work session. We met with some of them yesterday. Lisa spent time, Danielle spent time, Chief talked to him today, Jeremy, Brent, Matt. It's just been amazing. Everybody doing their part to give these kids a great experience that they literally will not forget, and I expect the younger ones to stay with it for 2 and 3 years. It's been that great already, so can't thank you enough for that. And I believe that is all I have. We'll call UDOT about the dead deer and other things that came up tonight. Thanks for Rana talking to the people from Emerald Hills. I know they're really frustrated, and that might be a good lesson for all of us to never move to an HOA. So unless you know exactly what you're going to do. Unless you're like Doug, get on the board right off. That's good. That's a good sign. Appreciate everybody's time and attention. With that, entertain a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.